can literally travel to the most beautiful place in the world and you could still feel horrible, miserable. And I think that journey in itself can be super beautiful because it almost feels like you have this blank canvas and you can paint the version of yourself you want to be. Welcome to this first episode of Beyond the podcast. I am V, your host, and I'm so excited that you are here. Starting this podcast has been on my mind for so long. This has really been a work in progress. And somehow life just happened and I kept on postponing. But this idea to start a podcast never really left my mind. And now I thought, you know what? We just started a new year. I just moved across the world to Australia. And this felt like the perfect time in this new chapter to also start with my podcast. So here we are. I'm really happy that you are here. And I would love to connect with you as well while this podcast is, on this journey, is evolving to really know what you want to hear. I have lots of ideas of what I want to share, but of course, it's also great to hear from you. And also, if you have any questions about any of the topics I share, feel free to reach out to me. In a way, I like to make this an interactive conversation, although now you're just listening to me. I would love it if afterwards, you share what you thought of this podcast, maybe, any questions you have, or perhaps an insight that you would like to share. And of course, spread the message, share this with anyone that you think would or could benefit from this podcast as well. As I shared in my previous intro episode, you can listen to that one as well if you haven't yet. This podcast is really about both the inner journey and the outer journey. I feel like they cannot go without each other. And I will talk a lot about travel and how it can be very transformational, but also about moving countries and living abroad, but in a way also more general about life transitions, because not everyone wants to move countries, right? But I feel like if you found this podcast, you are interested in travel no matter what. In what way, it doesn't matter, but somehow travel has a role in your life. And what I really want to do in this podcast is blend this outer aspect of traveling, of moving to different places, with the inner journey that we all go through, no matter where you are, even if you don't go anywhere. We all have this inner journey. And often there's not too much attention towards this inner journey. And that's something I want to change. My vision and my mission for this podcast and also for my business in general is to really make people aware of the fact that wherever you go, you take yourself. So you could, move across the world like I did, but nothing is going to change. Maybe the weather just gets a bit better, but besides that, nothing is going to change if you don't change yourself. So that's what I want to talk about in this first episode with you. How can you make sure when you change places, when you move abroad, that it's not just a physical change, but that actually you can really use this change to make a positive impact on your life? And as I said, this doesn't happen that often. Often, what I see also when I coach people, but also in my experience before, I used to work as an immigration consultant for 10 years. So I was really focused on the visa process and helping people with that. But what I often noticed as well, that people were very stressed and they were so focused on the logistics that they, in a way, forgot to carry themselves throughout the process. And what I mean with this is that your mindset is so important. You can literally travel to the most beautiful place in the world, have like this, you know, perhaps like islands with beautiful blue ocean and the white beach and the palm trees, and you could still feel horrible, miserable, because perhaps you feel homesick or lonely or overwhelmed by all the traveling. And that's what I mean with carrying yourself through the journey as well. And people often see moving abroad as a reset. They really see it as this new chapter. And in a sense, that's true. But I think the real transformation doesn't happen just by moving countries, but it happens when you really are intentional about how you change yourself. And you can really get into this new place, new energy, new new version of yourself type of mindset. And that also sometimes happens with the new year, right? We just started 2026, and often there's this energy of new year, new me. And I think the same thing happens when we move countries, like new country, new me. But then after a while, when sort of this first phase of excitement is over, you're sort of, settled into your life abroad, things start to go back to normal. Maybe you started a new job, or, you're just working on your career, perhaps you're working online. um, or in a way you just you go back to your normal routine, you do your groceries, you have to clean your apartment, all the like daily things that you used to do before you moved, all the sort of boring random things, they also come back into your life. You're not like a tourist anymore. And once that first excitement phase is over, that's often when people start to feel stuck again, because then they're just in their office job again, and maybe doubts they had or limitations they had within themselves or fears just show up again. As I said, maybe in the beginning you still had the distractions because everything is new, and that can feel very exciting. But once things start to slow down a little bit, maybe you realize, okay, yes, I'm in a different country now, but I'm still the same person. Nothing in that sense has really changed. And that's often when people start to feel homesick. For example, they start questioning, okay, is this it? I thought this would be this major life change, and now I'm just here and it feels like it's just the same. And maybe it's even worse in a way, because now I have to also deal with this different language that is super confusing to me, or cultural differences, and sometimes I just feel like an outsider, or I'm afraid to do something wrong or to offend someone, or I feel like they just don't understand me. Or perhaps you're dealing with loneliness because you actually don't know anyone, and you're far away from your family and friends, and you have to build a new community. Or perhaps you're just feeling overwhelmed by all the changes, and maybe your nervous system is still catching up to all the different changes in your new environment. So it's very normal if you feel stuck like that. And I'm not saying like you did anything wrong. This happened to a lot of people and it's completely normal. But I think what often happens is that there's this difference between your expectations versus reality. And if I think about my own journey, I just moved to Australia, and this is actually the second time that I moved here. In 2018, I moved to Australia for the first time, to Sydney to be specific. And at that time, I was sent by a job I had in the Netherlands. I was sent to Sydney to work here for 6 months. I was working as an immigration consultant. And after 6 months, I was supposed to move back to the Netherlands again. And the first few weeks in Sydney, I was, first of all, completely jet lagged. So that didn't help. But I also had to start working right away. And I had a very demanding office job. I started super early and worked like sometimes for 10 or 12 hours. And it was crazy. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I have to prove myself because, they send me across the world and I want to make a good impression. And, I have to adjust and get to know everyone and figure out the work I have to do in this job. So I was just putting all my effort in there. But besides that, in my private life, in my free time, I also wanted to make the most of this experience, because I was like, okay, I only have 6 months. So I want to do as much as possible. I want to see the city, explore, and really enjoy my time in Australia. So I would actually completely exhaust myself because I was working super hard. And then in my free time, I was just exploring the city, trying to make new friends. Every weekend, I would explore a new beach or a new national park. And I was just on the go all the time until a certain moment. I got sick and I felt so tired. I was just exhausted. I just exhausted myself. And I remember it was a Saturday morning and I was just lying in bed and I had all those plans again for the weekend. And I was just like, I cannot do it. I have to rest. I really have to listen to my body now. And in that sense, that was a reality check. It really made me realize, okay, the lifestyle that you are creating for yourself now is not sustainable. And it was actually the way I had been living before in the Netherlands as well. Always on the go, always chasing the next thing, always, trying to make the most out of my time, never giving myself enough rest. And when that happened to me, I realized no, if I want to make the most out of my time here, I have to do this in a different way. I have to take care of myself first. And that's when I started working with my mindset and really started focusing more on my inner journey as well. And then things started to shift quite fast, actually. I really started to listen more to my body. I gave myself more rest. And I realized that even though it felt like I was doing less, I actually had a much better experience because I could enjoy it more because I wasn't so exhausted. And now, many years later, I moved to Sydney again, and this time my experience is so different. First of all, I had quite some changes in the meantime. Last time when I moved to Sydney, I was single. Now I'm married already for more than 3 years. Last time I was in a corporate job, I was building my corporate career. Right now, I have my own business, so it's also a complete identity shift in that sense. And I think the most important thing, besides those factors, is that I worked a lot on my inner growth, in my on my personal growth in the past few years. Last year was really like shitty, so to say. I really had a tough year. I went through a lot of dark phases and really had to face my own shadows and limitations and really work on some tough things. And that was not easy, but looking back now, I realize I came stronger out of it, and all the experience of the past is actually helping me now to create a lifestyle here that is really fulfilling, that really fits with what I want out of life. So what I want you to take away from what I'm sharing today is to be very intentional of how you are living your life. And you can do this before you move abroad. Maybe right now you're thinking about this dream of moving countries. Maybe you have seen other people do it. Maybe you already have followed my journey online and you feel inspired and you think, oh, maybe I want to make a change as well and see if moving abroad is something that I would like to do. Perhaps now you're in the middle of preparing yourself for your move. Or perhaps you have already moved. Perhaps you actually have been living abroad for a while now. There's never a right time or a bad time to actually start redesigning your life. Like right now is the perfect time to do it. It's always a good time. So don't feel like you have to be in a certain phase or not. And really think about, let me make this more specific actually. Like when I talk about redesigning your life, what does that actually mean? How can you do that? And I think it starts with asking yourself the right questions. One question that really helps me, that I ask myself often, is how or who do I want to become here in this new place? And even if you haven't moved yet, you can ask yourself that question and use it as sort of a future visualization exercise, perhaps, and really tune into the person you want to become when you move abroad. And that's super powerful because, in that sense, you're really tuning into that energy and into this future vision of who you can be. And it's not about escaping a previous version of yourself or suppressing who you were before and just feel like, oh, new country, new me. And I just forget about everything before and I'm just going to make this big change. I think it's more about realizing who you truly are. And sometimes changing locations can really make such a difference in that because you literally step out of a bubble you used to be in and you realize you look at it from sort of a bird eyes view. You look at your life and you realize, okay, those things that I was doing, perhaps those habits that I used to have, actually, they were not really supporting me and they don't really fit anymore with the life that I want to lead. So, really think about that for yourself because in reality, when you move countries, you really bring all your habits with you, all your limiting beliefs, all your coping mechanisms, all your boundaries, or perhaps lack of boundaries, and in a way, your entire identity. And sometimes that's what can be very confusing and overwhelming. When you go through those changes, you actually realize, okay, but who am I really when I don't have perhaps certain expectations from other people anymore, or certain labels that I put on myself in this place? What if when I distance myself from that and I start new in a place where no one actually knows me? Who am I here? And I think that journey in itself can be super beautiful because it almost feels like you have this blank canvas and you can paint the version of yourself you want to be. But at the same time, that can also be very overwhelming and confusing. And that's what I said when people often feel stuck because they don't know who they are anymore. And that can be scary as well. And I think that's also one of the things I love about supporting people through this journey. Like when I coach my clients, it's often about this identity work. Like sometimes people come to me for the practical support of, oh, I want to move countries. Can you help me make it happen? Yes, of course. But along the way, they also realize there's so much more than just the practical stuff. And I think that's where the real transformation happens. And I think that's what I'm most passionate about in my work, to really see how someone can discover more of who they are, not by, as I said, suppressing or putting things away that they don't like about themselves, but really peeling off some layers that they perhaps put on themselves, perhaps pressure from the people around them. And now those people are further away, so maybe they feel less pressure and feel like they can be more themselves. Or perhaps they were in a job that didn't really fit, and now this move abroad opened up space for a new career. Or perhaps they're finally going to study something they love to do and they never gave themselves the permission to do it. And this move actually opened this pathway to study abroad and to really make this happen. So there are so many ways that moving abroad can really, in a way, disrupt your identity. And it's really about questioning yourself when we talk about redesigning your life. Okay, who am I without the boundaries that I put on myself or that I perhaps feel like other people put on me? Who am I without familiar roles? Who am I without my usual routines, right? That's also something that really affects your day to day. Because eventually, transformation is not something that just happens like from one day to another. It's like, oh, now I have had this transformation. No, it's an ongoing process and it's something that happens day to day. It's really about the tiny choices you make every day that in the long run lead to this transformation that you're looking for. So it's really about becoming more intentional about how you want to spend your day. And that's how you slowly start to redesign your life. So if we make this very practical, and perhaps you want to write down those questions and journal on them after, if you'd like, or you can just listen and maybe see what shows up in the moment. So a prompt that you can use to actually really dive a little bit deeper into this on how you want to redesign your life is, okay, how do I actually want to live here? If no one or nothing was impacting me, if I would just really ask myself, really tune into my soul, how do I actually want to live here? Think about that for a moment. And with that, think about, what am I no longer available for? What have you perhaps been tolerating until now that you don't want to tolerate anymore? That was a past version of you. This version of you, who is taking the leap to move countries, or who has moved already, or who wants to go on this life changing trip, what is this person no longer tolerating? How are you stepping up your level, really upgrading your lifestyle? And then another one that can be very powerful, which I think is always fun to do, and perhaps you've heard of this before, is to really tune into what your ideal day looks like. You can also journal about this, or you can do a visualization and really tune into, okay, if I wake up in the morning, what am I going to do? What would I love to do in my ideal day? And then after that, how does my day proceed? Am I going to work? Or am I going to exercise? Am I going to spend time with family or friends? What am I actually going to do in my ideal day? And I think most importantly, even instead of thinking about all the things you would like to do, is to tune into how you want to feel. Because that feeling can really be your anchor. And it can be something you can actually bring into the present moment as well. That's another part of it, right? Like when you think about your vision, it's something you can put in the future about all the things you want to do. But if you think more about, okay, how do I want to feel? It's something you can already bring into the present moment. Because a feeling is like, okay, why can I not feel that right now? Right? What do I need to do to actually start feeling this right now? For example, if I think about myself, my word or theme for this year is alive, feeling more alive. And this actually comes from the tough year that I had last year, in which I didn't feel as much joy as I wanted to feel. So this year, especially now that I'm in this new country, new city, new place, I'm like, I want to focus more on things that make me feel alive in my work, in my business, in my free time, the activities I do, but also just in the daily things that I do. What can I do to add more joy into my life, to feel more alive? And instead of putting this as a future vision, I'm bringing this with me every day. I'm really being intentional about my day every day and ask myself, okay, what can I do today to feel alive? Or just right now in this present moment. And actually, sharing this episode with you makes me feel alive. It gives me a lot of joy. So think about that for yourself. Maybe it's also a nice invitation to think about a word or theme you want to focus on this year. And I know I'm throwing a lot of things at you right now, but I just want to open up this space for you to reflect and to start thinking about those things. And you don't have to do everything. You can just listen. You don't have to do anything. This is totally up to you. But just see what resonates and what you feel excited about. And maybe one of those questions sparks something inside of you and can really maybe give you some clarity for the next step you would like to take. Eventually, to wrap all of this up, what I want you to use as a takeaway, what I would like you to walk away with today after this episode, is that moving abroad isn't the transformation itself. It's really about redesigning your life. That is the transformation. And as I said before, that can be before you move abroad, Maybe, as I said, maybe you're still in a dream phase. Maybe you don't even know if you want to move abroad. Maybe you would like to go on a life-changing trip, but you don't know if you would like to really stay in a place for a long time. For a long time, perhaps you just want to explore different places, try out the nomad life. Maybe you are already in it completely, preparing for your move, or you are already traveling around, figuring out remote work life, or perhaps you have just recently moved abroad like me, or perhaps you have been abroad for a while and you feel like, okay, is this it? Should I move back home? Should I move somewhere else? I just don't feel fulfilled anymore, or that initial spark is gone. Really take a moment for yourself to analyze, in a way, how your life is at the moment, and if there are ways that you can redesign your life. That is what this is really about. I want to give you this spark to be very intentional about how you are living your life and how you can combine both the inner and the outer journeys. And I think that's a beautiful invitation to start this podcast with, to have this first episode really about this, because I think this is really about the core of what I do and of how I want to live my life, but also how I've been helping other people in my coaching about, how they can live their lives and be very intentional. And I think that's really eventually what makes us happy, if we design a life that really fits with who we are. And that's not just about the practical steps we take, but also a lot about how conscious we are of what is going on inside of ourselves, our mindset. And it's not about, fake positivity. I'm not saying you have to be positive every day. I don't think that's possible. Would be nice. And of course, you can be as positive as possible every day. But of course, we're all human. We have moments that we just feel down, that we feel sad or angry or disappointed or depressed. And that's all part of the human experience as well. So I think redesigning your life is not about trying to make it perfect, but just trying to make it more you, to really think about what is important for me, what are my priorities, how can I live my life without worrying so much about what people think, feeling like you need permission from someone, but really allowing yourself to dream big and to take action towards those dreams. Because we can have the most beautiful big dreams, but if we never take any action towards them, then eventually what will happen at the end of our lives? We just look back and regret all the steps we didn't take, all the chances we missed, all the things we wish we would have done, but we didn't because perhaps we were afraid, or we just didn't know what to do, right? And maybe you have this big dream and you feel like, okay, yes, I know in theory what I want, but practically I have no idea where to start. Then find someone to help you with it. You don't have to figure this out alone, especially when you're feeling stuck. And as I said, you're not doing anything wrong, because sometimes we can really judge ourselves when we feel stuck. And I've done that in the past as well. Like, okay, but I have so many ideas, and why do I feel stuck? Don't judge yourself. You're not stuck. You're just redesigning your life. You're figuring out what you want. You're figuring out what your next steps could be. So I'm going to end this episode with this. And thank you so much for tuning in. I would love to see you in the next episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can stay up to date on future episodes. And for now, I wish you a beautiful rest of your day.